So good day to all the thrivers out there. For those who don't know Neil, you might be living under the rock. He is also known as the digital marketing maverick. He is a co-founder of NP Digital or Neil Patel Digital, a premier digital marketing agency. He and his team manages a lot of Fortune 500 or Global 5,000 odd customers like Amazon, HP, Viacom, NBC, and so on and so forth. You receive presidential recognition awards from President Obama. You've had the United Nations honor. You had the congressional recognition from the House of Representatives. I'm honored to have you as my guest here.
Cool. You're too kind, and the awards don't mean much. All that matters is what you're doing today, not what you did in the past.
That's a great advice to start with. So good day to all the thrivers out there. Our today's topic is 2024 B2B SaaS Growth. We have a few marketing ideas to help startups thrive. Neil, welcome to the podcast. He's a maverick in the digital marketing space. I have not met Neil until today. So this is new and exciting. I'm brimming with excitement, as you can probably tell. For those who don't know Neil, let me tell you a little bit. And if you don't know yet, you might be living under the rock. Here's a quick introduction. So Neil has been doing marketing since pretty young, even during school time. He is also known as the digital marketing maverick. He's a co-founder of NP Digital or Neil Patel Digital, a premier digital marketing agency. You might remember having or at least receiving many of the email or social posts from Neil himself. He and his team manages a lot of Fortune 500 or Global 5,000 odd customers like Amazon, HP, Viacom, NBC, and so on and so forth. But more importantly, for all the people, he's hands-on. Many of his posts and social posts are very accurate, very small tips. He's got millions of followers all across the social media platforms. Neil, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So Neil, I was actually amazed by the amount of posts that you do. I'm also aware that you've been doing this for a very long time, since younger days. While I was looking you up and while I was talking to your agency, I got to know that, and I wasn't aware of it, you received presidential recognition awards from President Obama. You've had the United Nations honor. You had the congressional recognition from the House of Representatives. And I'm honored to have you as my guest here.
Cool. You're too kind, and the awards don't mean much. I'm not saying that because of any political stance or anything like that. A lot of people have tons of different awards, right? All that matters is what you're doing today, not what you did in the past.
Yeah, and that's a great advice to start with. So Neil, many of our listeners are early stage startups. Now I want to jump right into and picking your brain on this. So we inquired on what could we ask you. We checked with early stage startups. We're running community events, meetups, in-person meetups, webinars. And across the board, we've seen really 2 or 3 trends. The first one is that, sure enough, there's lots and lots of SaaS startups now. Competition is heating up across the board. Sales is becoming harder. Growth has generally come down. I think you've also talked a lot of times about the old playbooks don't work much, but there's some playbooks which do. There's an interesting conversation that we were having the other day. Some of these early stage startups who came from a sales-led growth era, and they essentially started putting, especially Series A and Series B, and the founders, they knew the old playbooks, which is marketing dollars, get into ad spend, promote, but you'd get lots and lots of visitors on your website. Hardly less than 1% will actually sign up and even convert. So could you maybe start off with what do you see out there from a marketing, generally from the digital marketing industry standpoint? What's the conversion rate looks like? Why has the growth stalled? And we can take it from there more towards the B2B space.
Sure. So if you look at growth, we're dealing with a really bad economy, right? Forget what people label it, whether they say it's a recession, not a recession. The reality is the economy is not as good as it once was. We know that. Yes, there's a boom in the stock market, but a lot of the boom is all these AI companies like NVIDIA or companies leveraging AI versus just general companies growing, right? Nike today announced that they're struggling in China. Southwest Airlines this week announced that their sales are going to be lighter than they thought. And Southwest does travel. Nike does shoes. So economy is one part, but there's another part that a lot of people don't talk about, in which AI is this new technology. It's made life easy. But let me tell you one thing, AI has made marketing harder. And here's why. With the cloud, it made it really easy for a startup to launch. AI and things like no code have even made it easier. So what has all this done? This has just increased the amount of
Correct.
competition because it doesn't cost that much to release a startup anymore. See, when I started as an entrepreneur and you raised a
Correct.
seed round, keep in mind, seed rounds were not more than $1 million max. Okay. Now times have changed. I've seen people do seed rounds of $5-10 million, right? But when I was an entrepreneur, seed rounds are usually like $500,000, million max was a really good seed round. And Series A, if you did something like $4 million, that's a good Series A. 10 million was a good size Series B. All right. This is just to give you perspective. Nowadays, you see Series Bs and As. Some of them could be $50, $100 million, $200-300 million. And it's just a letter if it's a Series A or B, but there's way more capital to deploy. And because AI has made it easier for companies to go out there and create a company and launch, you now naturally have more competition. And when you have more competition, that just means it's going to be harder to do marketing and sales. And then when you have it costing cheaper to create a startup, what are you going to spend your money on? You spend it on sales and marketing. If it doesn't cost as much to get it off the ground, you have more money to spend on the other stuff. Again, just creates more competition. And I see that trend continuing. AI has not made marketing easier. It's made it harder. And most people don't think of it that way. They're like, oh, AI can help automate this task and do the other thing. Well, yeah, all these efficiencies just create more money for people to spend on things like paid ads.
Yeah. So maybe let me quote a couple of them. I think you mentioned that the seed companies and you getting surprised with 5 million, 6 million, 10 million seed rounds. I was surprised to see 50 million seed round for DevRev.
There's a $50 million seed round?
That's right, DevRev. So that's the name of
Never
it.
heard of them. That's
So I think the point is that I think you made a very good point. Raising money has become a lot more easier. 6
for the
million
seed round.
for the seed round. Yes, right.
Yeah,
You're right. For the seed round.
yeah, for seed rounds, I actually think it's really easy. I think later stage is harder because they're really picky, but the ones who have all the right metrics, like net negative churn, they're continually growing even in a bad economy, all those kind of things, you're seeing those players raise an arm and a leg, right? Money is abundance for those kind of
Correct.
companies.
Correct. So that's one data point.
It's like,
The
yeah,
second data point I think you mentioned about building a startup is now a lot more easier. Even though you can raise a lot more money, building a startup is a lot more easier. Essentially, building a baseline product is a lot more easier. Getting to an MVP is a lot more easier. What's actually getting a lot more difficult is the distribution of those products. And in talking to almost about 200 odd seed, Series A, and Series B companies, what we've noticed is their sales and marketing budget. To your point, it's upwards of 60 to 70% of the total spend, total company spend. So you're absolutely right, which means that the distribution has gotten way more harder. The cost of acquisition per customer has gotten way more higher, especially for B2B SaaS companies. It's almost closer to 2.64 on a dollar spend. So on a dollar return, 2.64 is the dollar spend in acquiring a customer. So that's more than 2.5 times that you're spending to acquire a customer. In this particular market, sure enough, there's a bloodbath out there. There's more and more startups coming up. There are more and more companies in the same categories. For example, on my last check, we were at the Microsoft AI conference, and they're essentially attracting cohorts of AI startups. And I went to the AWS AI startup, the Activate program. Together, there's more than 40,000 companies which are in the bucket of AI. So all of these early stage companies, they have AI or Gen AI, as the tagline. They're enabling various text to video, text to audio to video, or a whole bunch of these things out there. Competition is crazy. Sure enough, the market will probably consolidate, market will get to the right place. But until that time, there are other companies who may not necessarily be fully AI. For them, it's become extremely difficult. VC money is not available to them as much. Their valuations are coming down. What do you see out there
the
on how
valuation
can...
is becoming realistic. And same with SaaS companies. At one point during some of these boom times, some of them were worth 20 times revenue with no profit. And I'm not saying you're not worth 20 times. It depends on a lot of factors. But some of them keep going for many years and they never hit any profitability. And is this that person selling furniture is doing better than you because, yes, they may not do as much revenue, but they're still collecting 50 million a year in profit, and they have been for a long time. When you look at companies, believe if you build a revolutionary product, people just come and use it. Now, if you build something really crazy like an OpenAI, sure, word of mouth marketing kicks in, but that's not the case for most B2B SaaS companies. The reality is you build something amazing, no one sees it, and you got to figure out how to market it. And then what makes it harder is your subset of a market is very specific. Oh, I'm looking for other enterprise companies with a minimum of 10,000 employees, and I'm looking for a CIO, and I'm looking to just target them, and they got to get X, Y, and Z division on board for them to use my product and for it to work and for them to be a sticky customer, right? Like, it's so specific, but then the moment you get them, and if you can get enough of them, you've built a really massive company.
Yeah, maybe let's dive into it a little bit, right? There are two buckets of questions I have. The first bucket is, what could the early stage startups do to stay alive, to distribute their products through the low cost, maybe could use some low cost marketing to acquire customers, because ads or ad spend is too much.
Yes, and sorry to cut you off. B2B startups are thinking about it the wrong way. They think either I run ads or I do marketing or I build a community or I create a free trial or a money back guarantee or a freemium type of concept. None of those work as well as they used to. The best way to grow a B2B SaaS company is to have a free offering, not freemium, free offering. We found it's cheaper to give away the product for free than it is to spend the money on advertising. And I'll give you a great example of this. All right. I can give away software for free. Let's say it helps you with your SEO analysis of your webpage. And I can give away everything for free. Here's how you do the keyword research, your backlink data, your on-page SEO, yada, yada, yada. I can give it away all for free. And then I would make my money selling something else. In my case, I sell services, right? It's a much quicker way to grow by giving away something for free and then selling something bigger on the back end. Or I could sell other marketing services. For example, I can sell our marketing products. I can sell a paid ad management tool. I can sell a social media management tool. Because if someone's doing SEO, they're probably leveraging some other channels as well. So I can make money in some other way. That's not freemium. That's a very big difference. That's free. And people get that wrong, but that's probably one of the best ways to grow a B2B startup. Because they look at freemium as very similar as to free. They're totally two different things.
Let me dig into this a little bit. You're right. So the free trial conversion is still somewhere between 1% to 4%, but the free products usage are spiking up, right? So you've seen, especially for developer, financial, healthcare companies.
You're looking at 1% to 4% probably if you're not taking a credit card up front for someone who's a free user.
Correct.
If you're taking a credit card up front, and they're free, but they can get all these paid features from day one, and they have to put in a credit card, your conversion rate is probably going to be higher, but you're probably going to get less free users.
True. So which means if the visitors are coming to your website, if you have a free offering, very likely that it's almost about 4 to 5% of the users. And we've seen some data. I'm not sure how much of that might be true. You might have better data than that. 4 to 5% of these visitors will essentially either download or start using the free product that we have. And only less than 1% of them will actually click on the sign up or the free trial button. Of the 100 visitors, only one might even actually click on the free trial, but 4 might actually click and download your open source or the free product, which means that what you're telling me, I'm able to now associate that. But the second part is essentially what you're saying is that instead of doing free trial at this, go back to the good old days of razor versus razor blades. Give away the razor for free, charge for razor blades, right? And that's what your recommendation is. But I don't see that happening, right? Yeah, I said happening only at Series A or Series B levels, where they have understood that the conversion rate is not that high. They have enough oomph, enough money to be able to go create a free product and then being able to go monetize. I don't see that happening other than if they're an open source company, they have put everything on GitHub. And then over 2, 3, 4 years' time, they've realized there's a lot more downloads. And then they take a cloud offering of that open source product and make that happen. but that's not very natural. Let me maybe ask you again, what can an early stage startup who's 1 year old, 2 year old, and who's got, let's say, 10, 15, 20 odd customers, a very small team who may not be necessarily be able to afford building a free product, because if they keep on building it for the next 4, 5, 6 months time, they might die because they won't have any revenue other than getting VCs to fund them. What else can they do to get something out there so that they can earn even a tad bit of revenue to get to the product market fit?
I'll answer that question, but at first I would say you should still build a free product if you're a seed. And if you can't afford it, figure out a side hustle, figure out a 9 to 5 job, let the thing be free for a while and build up traction and word of mouth marketing until you decide to quit your job and you can focus on it full time because you can raise enough money or do something. I actually believe that is a correct way to grow, and it's a much better, more effective way. Ideally, you should be focusing on 100% of your time and you should figure out how to get money. Hopefully you got a partner who makes enough money, or you're a doctor or a lawyer or a tech employee, that executive that gets paid well, so you can go and focus on it. But yeah, no, it's tough. And if you want to charge from day one, the best way that we see to really grow and get revenue, especially at the beginning, is things like SEO, participating in communities like Quora, Reddit. If you can do podcasts, and when you're participating in communities, if you are responding to people and answering their questions on these social sites, some of them will sign up. Getting the reviews from like the G2s and stuff like that, they do drive signups as well. The other thing that you should be doing is you should test out paid ads and see if you can make it profitable. The 2.64 that you mentioned, yeah, that's probably true when you're at scale. But if you're not spending much money, you can get your economics way better. It's when you want to scale it up that it starts becoming much more expensive. Another strategy that I love doing is creating content for the social webs, just educational material, answering the problems that my potential customers face. All these things help drive signups. It's not the ideal way because it's a lot of work, but you're not going to find one strategy that's really going to get you to where you want to be. You have to take an omni-channel approach because all these marketing channels are saturated and competitive.
Could you maybe share a little bit of insights about omni-channel? Of the 200 plus startups from across the board that we've generally asked them, how would they actually go ahead and distribute their products? Sure enough, some of the things that you mentioned, we'll get some more G2 reviews, SEOs, print some content. Those were the usuals. But never have we seen that they have an omni-channel presence, especially for seed or Series A companies. That typically happens only when they go slightly bigger. Do you recommend early stage startups to immediately start working on multi-channel approach right away, Instagram, YouTube, across the board?
What seed startups don't get is you can repurpose content. They believe your content for YouTube needs to be different than TikTok and Twitter. And they're right. It ideally needs to be different. But who says you can't use the same content or repurpose and make it very similar and get something? Something is better than nothing. That doesn't mean that it's ideal, but it's a start. Just like when you're a startup, you do stuff that isn't the best because you're strapped for time and you're strapped for money. The same goes with marketing. And you can repurpose content and leverage multiple platforms. And I see startups make this mistake all the time, in which they believe that, hey, TikTok needs a different form of content, so I'm not going to upload it. We already created the content and spent all the time. Uploading and getting some views is better than not uploading and getting zero views. It's just big misconception that seed startups have. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's opened the door. So listeners, if you're listening and you're an early stage startup, omni-channel with ads, as part of podcast show notes, we'll put in some of the Neil Patel's small tips about omni-channels, and we have lots of them that we have collected over a period of time with Benefit Lab there. Neil, next question to you, and this is about events. These are events wherein the startups will go and put up a booth at some of these road shows. They will go to various conferences, spend tens of thousands of dollars towards it. Is that effective?
It is effective, but not at the beginning when you spend all the money. We go to conferences, we do it. We figure out how to work out deals with them and get it for free or low cost. What's even more effective that startups don't do is they think just having a booth and tons of people are going to come by and just buy your product. There's thousands of booths or hundreds of booths. It's not that simple. What's a better approach is you work with the organizer. This is assuming you're going to spend some money. You say, hey, here are my ideal customers, and we can solve this unique problem for them. Who are your attendees? We want to invite 30, 40, 50, 60 of them for a lunch. We want to spend that money instead of on a booth on a specific lunch where we do a presentation while they eat and we break down how our product is going to solve their problem. So then you're doing account-based marketing like it, where you're picking the exact people who are going to be attending the lunch, and then you're breaking down the solution to their problems because you know those customers are your ideal fit.
Yeah, and are the organizers amenable for doing something of that sort for an early stage startup? I've seen that happen at bigger companies.
No, you're
Mhm.
giving them money. It doesn't matter what startup you are. Instead of giving the money
That's
for the
right.
booth, you give it to them for this. Now,
That.
you said earlier you put $3 million into your own business. What did you do before this?
I built two startups earlier, which got acquired. The first one was a backup and recovery software product, which got acquired much early on, about 1.5 years into the product development. We had no idea on how to raise capital. We started having a lot of partners and they started deploying it. So it was mostly partner-led sales, right? We did not even have our own sales team. So partners were
It's a
doing it.
great strategy. And you didn't raise money, it sounds like, so even better. And then what was the second one?
The second one was a cloud security and compliance startup. And yes, we took some investment from various seed companies. Microsoft invested. We had some large risk advisor companies invest and also bring customers. So we had some sales, but we had a portion of that was mostly about partner advisory, partner alliances. And we got more customers from the partners like Microsoft, Deloitte, Ernst & Young, PwC, KPMG. They got a lot more customers than our own sales engine at that time. But essentially, we tuned our product for both sales led, but had more tuned towards partner led. But after we got acquired by Zscaler, it was all sales led. So we had to break the bonds with the partners because Zscaler was a 100% sales led company. Sure enough, partners were there, but mostly to implement rather than being able to go bring in customers like that.
So the reason I asked this question is now when you start this startup, you're able to do more because you have more money personally. And the reason I bring this up is a lot of people try starting companies so young, and I was one of them. I also think it's sometimes a little bit better to work for the corporate world or another startup and learn from them before you go create your own. And you would also have a little bit more money or a lot more money depending on how well you do. And that makes it a little bit easier to do a startup. I think that's a big mistake that not enough entrepreneurs realize early on, because if you just go out there working for another company, it teaches you a lot and it also gives you more padding. So that way you may not need as much money to do a startup. And then the second thing is people look at marketing channels as, oh, marketing is me going out there and creating demand. For our business, we generate revenue from Forrester, right? There's places like Gartner and Forrester that you can get involved with, or partner channels that can drive quite a bit of revenue that aren't sexy, that a lot of B2B startups forget about. And there's another B2B platform that's not a competitor who has your ideal customers. And if you can figure out a way to partner with them, they can drive you a lot of customers. You just got to make it worth their while, right? And you got to just figure that out. But there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. There's no right or wrong way. But I do love telling entrepreneurs, be patient, and you don't have to create a company from day one. Go work for someone else before you go and start your own company.
That's great advice. In my case, I call myself more of a scrappy entrepreneur. I've been working with large corporate companies early in my career. And after I got acquired, I would generally stay there for about 2 to 3 years' time until the business, the milestones, and the handle has been done. I learned my lesson. I used to be very affectionate about the company that I would work with, not necessarily pursuing my own goals, but being able to say that, hey, I'm the best product manager. I'm the best dev manager in the team. I have my titles of principal blah or partner blah. And over a period of
But
time,
then
I've realized that's not my calling.
yeah. And by the way, none of that really matters. Who cares what your title is? All that really matters is what results you produce. When you get into big corporations, there's a lot of politics, which you must have experienced working at some of these brands. And then you quickly realize, are you set up to deal with those politics? Does that fit your personality or not? And once you realize if you are or you're not, it makes life a lot easier because then you know what path to go down towards. Because if
Yeah.
you're going to do another startup, then the politics don't matter, right? You just do your job. You try to produce the best results for the company who acquired you. You try to hit your earnout if you have one, and then you move on when time is ready. If you're trying to climb the corporate ladder, to adjust your strategy, and not everything is about what you produce. A lot of it is perception and how well do you get along with other people within an organization.
That's like building a startup as well. It's all about perception. It may not necessarily about whether your product is good or bad. So you rightly hit it on the nail. Neil, I know we will be out of time. So I have one or two more questions to you. And listeners, all the things that Neil was asking me about my experiences, it may not necessarily apply, but for me, partner led has been mostly a driver for the business, which is where I generally go look for where alliances can be met. Gartner helped us a lot in my previous company, so they taught us.
Here's another thing. Did you know, you heard of Marketo, right? I'm assuming you have.
Yeah.
Marketo eventually ended up getting acquired by Adobe. Did you know a lot of their sales was driven by Salesforce sales reps also selling Marketo and recommending it to their customers?
Yes. And they were big at the Salesforce, was that Dreamforce conference. Salesforce would essentially, I think Salesforce Ventures had already partnered or were, like if my memory goes right, Salesforce had invested in Marketo, helping them essentially also being able to sell more.
I know Salesforce invested heavily in HubSpot. I did not know that they also invested in Marketo.
Yeah, maybe much earlier. Maybe I'm missing the dots here. But partner-led has been a missed opportunity for many startups. And I've seen this, and I think, Neil, you pointed out. First-time founders, they focus on product. The second time or the third time founders, they figure out how to distribute. This is a trend I'm constantly keep looking at. I think when you were selling CDs and automotive parts, I've heard your podcast some time back, you're focused on how can I do my best job at that. The second time around, the third time around, you were looking at alliances. You didn't go ahead and build KISS metrics. You essentially acquired them and took them to the echelons of success. I see that happen more and more with people who have been exposed to the variety of ideas rather than a single track of mind. And that single track of mind is where the first-time founders lash themselves onto, and that openness usually happens at second or the third-time founders. I know we are out of time, Neil. I would love to bring you on sometime later again, maybe as part of a live webinar of some sort. But thank you so much, Neil.
I would do it again. I really enjoyed this.
I would do it again. Thank you so much, Neil. And we'll reach out to Marina. We'll get the podcast out and we'll send that note to you. I'll also send you a personalized note or email saying that I've done this so that you can also post it with millions of the followers as well. Thank you so much, Neil, for having us. Take care.
Thank you.